Was with two women for about 4 or 5 years before that shit blew up. I was living by a live by, die by basis. I wasn't worried about building a happy home. I was just worried about getting home that night. I knew I was on the verge of becoming someone so fucking toxic and destructive, and there was nobody that was gonna stop me. Lessons from a cheater. And I've cheated on many things in my life, but today I want to speak about being a cheater in my past relationships and what the detriment of how it affected all the parties involved taught me to not repeat that and now have a very healthy powerhouse of a relationship. So, starting from the very beginning, growing up, I see my dad cheating on my mom, saw how much it broke her, didn't even at that time, obviously at the age of 8 or 9, it was the worst thing that could have happened, right? I was the only kid on the block where the parents weren't living in the same household anymore. Only kid at school where all the parents were showing up together to the open houses when my parents were showing up separately. So at that time, it really affected me very bad, and I had a chip on my shoulder for a couple years after that. But soon it just became a figment of my imagination. And what they had forced me to do was grow up to be a man very soon. There's a difference between being a gentleman and being a man. I had adopted ethics and manners from my dad. He's a very high moral, high integrity guy, right? So there is a mix of me being a gentleman, but me forcing myself to become a man very fast. So I did that in all the wrong ways. And that was getting out there on the streets, having a gun at a very young age, it just fucking laying my testosterone flow at such a fucking young age, wanted to be this masculine, the smallest kid with the biggest fucking heart, biggest fucking voice. I wanted to be the toughest, I wanted to be the strongest, the fastest, and that forced me to grow up very fast at a very young age. So not gonna go into it very deep as far as the streets, what happened and how, I started to become the person that I became in that life. But in this life, fast forward to about my younger teens where I had met the first mother of my son, first serious relationship. I was loyal to a T to her until I saw some stupid fucking, very minute. I think it was a Facebook message at the time. Or what was the other one? Not Facebook, the one before that, MySpace message. And I was in distraught. That shit, like at the time, like I'm fucking heartbroken bullshit. It just fucking made me want to become the fucking monster that I became even more. So that process started to speed up, right? Had a child with her, wasn't even in a serious relationship with her at the time. I was just living like a fucking recipe of just straight, like I was gonna become. I knew I was on the verge of becoming someone so fucking toxic and destructive, and there was nobody that was gonna stop me, right? Very soon after having my first child, got into my second serious relationship, and right shortly after that, got into my love triangle. Was with two women for about 4 or 5 years before that shit blew up. It was about 10, 11 in the morning. I would get home right before the sun started to come up. If I'm not in bed sleeping, I wouldn't sleep. I was a fucking vampire. But that's the time that I would get home and go to sleep around every night, 6, 7 in the morning. And I wake up to about 100 missed calls from one, about 100 and fucking 50 from the other. And my first reaction when I saw the first missed call was like, fuck, my son is in danger. Something happened to my son. Mind you, I am already the crime boss of my organization, right? This is a very common thing amongst people in that life. But then I saw the other missed calls mixed in there. I'm like, fuck, I immediately knew what happened. I call and here we go. You fucking piece of shit. I was a fucking piece of shit. And Not to get too into detail, but people ended up getting hurt, people ended up going to jail, and that was that, right? That taught me a very valuable lesson because not only did I cheat on a woman, but I cheated on the mother of my son. This all blew up literally months after my son was born. And my thought process at the time was like, okay, he's still too young to know this, but he's going to learn this eventually. I didn't want my children knowing their father as that fucking piece of shit of a man, right? So that just kind of like flipped the switch for me, and I told myself I'm not gonna ever do this again. So there was a lot of back and forth, getting back together, going back off. It was never gonna happen. There's already too much bad blood in between. The damage had been done, and what did it teach me? Going into prison where I was forced to not have be put in a serious relationship, right? Before I went in, I said everyone just got to just part ways. Let me do this time on my own, and that really taught me to learn how to love myself. I was not in a position. Again, I was living by a live by, die by basis. I wasn't worried about building a happy home. I was just worried about getting home that night. If I got home that night, I was winning. If I woke up the next morning and the feds were knocking on my door, I was winning. That's it. That's all I was living by. And to think that me going into prison, I started to just replay this in my head, really dissect the situation. Everything from when my mom was cheated on to where I switched over to just being a complete monster and not respecting women to now saying this is not going to be me. This is not going to be the man that my children grow up to know. And yes, being incarcerated sped up that process, which at such a young age is why I've been filled with so much wisdom because I've always had that attitude like I'm going all in. Like if I'm going to become this fucking monster of a gang leader in my neighborhood, I'm gonna go all in. If I'm gonna go full blown transition and change my habits, drop all my vices, kill that little bitch of a voice, I'm going to go all in. So being incarcerated, mind you, I'm still in a very toxic, high risk environment, right? There wasn't too many people in there who aligned with my thought process, but it forced me to get to know myself. That was so powerful. I got to know my true, authentic self. I started to learn how to smile. I started to learn about the things that made me happy, and I started to picture the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So I saw Kat. I saw Kat, right? Figuratively. I didn't see her face. I didn't know exactly who she was going to be, but I painted the character of the person that I wanted to have in my life. And the only reason I attracted her or gravitated towards her was simply me becoming that person first. Again, it's always going to come back in full circle. Whatever you want in your life, you have to become the person in order to open up the doors to the blessings to receive them. If you haven't gone through enough shit, you can't go through that much more shit to have such a successful relationship or operate a successful business. You cannot get to the 40th floor by climbing the side of the fucking building. You have to climb the stairs. You have to learn how tired, how hard things can get. So every floor that you go up in, you learn something more. And I'm just using that as a metaphor for everything in life, right? This is something that you have to take heed in. If you want to either help create the person that you have in your life to become the person that you need to become that person first. Stop expecting or demanding that person to become that person for you. That's not how shit works, right? Or if you want to attract or gravitate the people that you want in your life, you need to become that person first. And don't do the bare minimum. Don't just say, you know what? I stopped this vice. I don't go out anymore. I'm focused on this, and it's constructively building me up. And you've been doing it for a week, a month, or a year. That's not how shit works. You need to become that person 10 times. 10 fucking times. So now you get to a place where the environment, the frequencies, the vibrations, the people that are just thinking at a higher level are all there. And this is where you open the door to a new and improved you.